Okay, welcome everybody to the lunch. Continue to eat, obviously, but we need to get the show on the road because we have a lot of things to take care of, including recognizing many of our peers today. A couple of housekeeping things. The bathrooms are in that corner. If you go in this direction, you'll have a much longer walk to do that. This session will run until about 1:30, so you have to hustle to get to the 1:30 session, but there's a lot to cover today, so we will move as expeditiously as possible. So I wanted to start off with an example of the special nature of this community, and that is, as you all know, many of you know, most of you know, there's a statewide imagery program that's ongoing, and so we had a milestone this week with the collection of the southern Piedmont Mountains, basically running from Montgomery County in the east to Cherokee County in the west. So the acquisition was completed day before yesterday, as I understand. So I want to give everybody involved that's give everybody a hand that's involved, and ask the contractors who've been working that to take a bow, if they're here. Yep. So great work. It may be the earliest that we've collected in that westernmost part of the state. Next item, I want to recognize folks that have really worked very hard over the past 9 months or so to put this conference on. It's not an easy task because all of you have day jobs, and sometimes I forget that when I ask you to do things, but you all come through in just very exemplary fashion. So I'm just going to run through the list real quick, have you stand if that's okay, quickly. So first on the arrangements committee, Diane Enright and Colleen Kiley. Here. David Giordano and Andy Goretti from the vendor committee. Jeff Essick and Matthew McClam from the program committee. Brett Spivey is the lone chair of the technology committee, so he does all of that. Rich Elkins and Jakima Dawkins for the Herbstout Awards committee. I don't think Kevin is here, but Kevin Haynes, Carolina ERISA chapter, has also been involved, participating in the workshop committee. Meredith DiMattina and Ed Shipman put on the poster session, did a great job. Jessie Huggins from DIT was our communications person. She's the person walking around with the camera. If you haven't noticed who she is, there she is. See, she still got the camera. And we really couldn't have done this without CMC and Associates, Liz Foreman, Fred Crawford, I think Fred may be at the desk, and Karen Crawford. Okay, I'm going to call Eddie Shipman to the stand to give the poster session results and recognize our winners.
I'd like to thank everybody that came out last night and viewed our posters, and I really appreciate everybody that contributed a poster. We have our results of our voting. In first place, Jeff Hyder. Second place was Danny Smith. And we had a tie for third place, Mark Andres and Diane Enright. Thank you all. Thank you.
So the next part of the agenda today is to recognize the local government committee or local government winners in the Herbstout Awards category. Would like to give you a little bit of background. I know there are a lot of new faces, and I might add young faces that I see that may not have been even on this earth before when Herbstout was running the conference. So I want to give you a little bit of background of how he was important to the evolution of the conference, and then share some more information about that. I'd like to recognize the Stout family first, sitting at one of the head tables here, Mrs. Luana Stout, Scott Stout, Laura Siffer, and Al Siffer. Okay, sorry. So Herb Stout started this conference because he was a visionary. He was a visionary in that he wanted local governments to be able to do more with technology, and he wanted local governments to share with each other. Herb was a chair of the Wake County Commissioners, and he was chair of the Triangle J Council of Governments during the 1980s when the conference started. He believed that one way to do this and share information was to have a statewide GIS conference. Very few states in that era had statewide GIS conference. I don't know if we were the first, but we might have been. Therefore, as a result of his passion for sharing information and passion for the technology, the GIS conference was born in 1987. Herb was also a private pilot. And so one of the things he felt passionate about was getting more support from the federal government. And just remember, this is 1992, so 31 years ago. He took his plane to Washington, D.C., sat down with folks at the Pentagon. Think about that for a minute. Sat down with folks at the Pentagon and asked them to consider sharing their imagery, their classified imagery, with local government. And elsewhere, he would be speaking for elsewhere as well. That was a bold move, but that's the way Herb rolled, so to speak. He knew that local governments were in desperate need of technology, data, good data, and he knew from conversations with other people that that data, that classified data, was available to people who had a need to know. Of course, he didn't realize that they would not make that available, in an unclassified kind of way. Unfortunately, on the return flight to Raleigh from Washington, his plane crashed just shy of the Raleigh-Durham Airport in bad weather, fog and rain. And it took Herb and a colleague, Brian Benson, from us. So we lost that passion that late night, that day. So we had to reemerge to find a way to continue seeing his passion realized through our work. So a group of us during that time decided to continue on with the conference, and we established the Herbstout Award to recognize local governments that are doing exemplary and innovative work. So since 1993, that award has been given out to local governments for their achievements. So the work continues. Technology changes. GIS has been adopted across the state in major ways in every locality, both large and small. Herb would likely be amazed at the progress, and we just need to continue that work. So we want to recognize those of you who are doing that work. The first local government we want to recognize today is Person County, and I'd like to ask Sally Vaughn to join me. So the way this works is there's an application process where local governments submit applications. We had a record number of applications this year, so the fact that we have these two winners is very special because there was good competition this year. The local government submit an application. It's reviewed by a review team comparing what the applicant has done to kind of the standard for North Carolina and standard for the size of the community they represent. And this year, we're very fortunate to have Sally Vaughn and Person County win the award. To tell you a little bit about this, Sally Vaughn and the team, she's sort of a one-person team, two-people team, a two-person team. Wow, that doubled your team. So Person County, if you don't know, is a county of 40,000 people. So not a huge county in terms of population, therefore not a huge budget or staff level. I want to give you a little bit about what won the award. So the title of the application was Road Sign Work Order Solution. And I'm just going to share some of the thoughts from the review team and in advance of actually giving her the award. So these are great comments. I decided not to rewrite anything because all of these comments were really good. Street signs are like a warm hug, reminding you, yes, you're on the correct route and all will be well. However, in those rare, unforeseen occasions when something disturbing happens and the street sign is gone, what happens next? How long will it take to get the sign back up? How can I let someone know the sign is gone? And believe it or not, this is not a simple process to replace this as you might expect it to be. And those of you who are in local governments and small cities and towns know that as well. One of the comments from the reviewers was most localities don't have the time, funding, or manpower to accomplish what Sally and her team did. The fact that a small shop like this was able to coordinate, collaborate, and communicate a plan to accomplish and solve the problem was extraordinary. It changed the way Person County conducted business processes surrounding the management and installation of street signs. It saved valuable time and money for the county and its citizens, while at the same time expediting issues that were and could have affected emergency response times during emergencies. So, I'd like to congratulate Sally. And the way the cups work, I didn't mention that, the Herbstout Cup, which I'll get. So for those of you who are also new to this is the Herbstout Cup that's named with every winner that's ever won it in the county category. And Sally can keep this cup and display it for the next 2 years until the next conference. Show it off, take it home, whatever she wants to do with it. Just don't scratch it. And she gets a plaque for permanent mounting in the county office space. So on behalf of the conference and the council, would like to present this to you for your recognition.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. You have a second?
Probably need to stay for the next one. I'll get the cup. Okay. So in the larger jurisdiction category, the winner this year is MAP Forsyth and the town of Kernersville. So I'd like to ask Jason and team to come up to receive this. So the Forsyth, they're winning on behalf of the Forsyth Community Assistance Registry for Emergency Services, or Forsyth Cares. Forsyth Cares is an innovative project utilizing GIS tools and technology to provide critical information to emergency services personnel and first responders ahead of their arrival in an emergency call leading to faster and more efficient provision of services. Originally the brainchild of Kernersville Police Detective Dave Mundy, Jason Clodfelder and the MAP Forsyth team created tools to collect data submitted from the public, made it available to dispatchers across multiple jurisdictions in a secure system, which makes the needed information available to emergency personnel while protecting the confidentiality of that data as required under HIPAA. The awards committee members who currently work in local government GIS immediately saw how effective a tool this could be in their own communities and spoke about wanting to replicate it in those communities. Whether natural or man-made, individual or community-wide, information is one of the greatest tools that we have in responding to an emergency and could potentially save significant life. So, I'd like to congratulate Person County, or not, Person County's already done, MAP Forsyth and the town of Kernersville for their excellent work. And so, regarding the cup, you guys need to draw straws or something to decide who takes it the first year and who takes it the second year. Oh, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep. Yep. That's it. The next part for me is a really fun part. That's recognizing students in the colleges and universities in North Carolina to receive awards based on their work academically. And it's super important because the next generation really needs to take the reins ultimately to make North Carolina even better and to provide new leadership to what we're doing in North Carolina and build on the things that we've done. The process here is each campus selects an undergraduate and or a graduate student using a process they determine. Each student is selected, receives a certificate and a $200 check. And I was joking with them that we can't do Venmo or other tools like that. So it's literally a check. I know that's old school, but that's the way that's the way the state rolls. And they also had a chance to speak on the conference program, which gives them that exposure, which is also, I think, very important. So I would like to recognize the students now. And I will start with the undergraduates. I'd like Katie, there's Katie. Katie Doherty from the North Carolina Property Mappers Association is going to join me. So when I call your name, just come to the stage, take the envelope, and return to your seats, and stick around for a picture at the end of the lunch today. That's the same with the other award winners as well, by the way. So the first winner is Helen Arnold from UNC Wilmington. Madison Eaton from Elon University, just down the road. Carolyn Feldman from Appalachian State University. Sarah Followell from UNC Chapel Hill. Ross Jensen from Fayetteville State University. Andrea Sarovitz from North Carolina State University. Nayland Visnius from Warren Wilson College. Cambria White from North Carolina Central University. You had me worried there for a minute. Now we move to the graduate students. Elijah Dalton from UNC Wilmington. Jeremy Davis from North Carolina State University. Eliza Merritt from Appalachian State University. Grace Shipman from UNC Chapel Hill. And Michael Wallace from North Carolina Central University.
Excellent.
So thank you, everybody, and especially thank you to the universities that participated this year. We appreciate your involvement in the conference and recognition of your students. Okay, this next set of awards is a lot of fun, honestly, because I know each of the folks that are receiving it, and I know personally what they've done for North Carolina. So this is a way to recognize really longevity and a sense of purpose, because longevity in a role is fine, but the sense of purpose and commitment to something bigger than yourself and bigger than your organization even is something that should be celebrated. So this is a new award category that we want to recognize certain folks, and we have four great recipients, I think, this time for this inaugural look at it. So each of these folks have met the standard of commitment and not, like I said, longevity throughout their careers and to the betterment of GIS in North Carolina and in service to our citizens, which we're all a part of as well. I could write maybe not a book, but at least a chapter on each of these individuals based on what I know and what I've learned through working with them and learning of their other work through other people. So today, this is a way of just saying thanks for that effort and that commitment. And hopefully, it will be inspirational to some of you in this room as you move along your career and can take your place as a leader, as someone who cares about the bigger purpose in North Carolina. So I would encourage you to talk to each of these people and see how they did it. And we hope to see you on the stage one day as a recipient of this award. So the first recipient is Pam Carver from Henderson County. I'll also say that all these people are very modest. You can come up here. So Pam has served in the Land Records Office in Henderson County for many years, but she's played a vital role across North Carolina in helping create one of the most important data sets that's not only important for North Carolina, but ultimately I think will be important to the nation. And that's NC Parcels. Pam shared a vision of a statewide geographic data set with standard data fields for NC Parcels more than 14 years ago. Understanding the big picture, appreciating the bigger picture, and wanting to be a part of that bigger picture. She served as co-chair of the working group for Seamless Parcels, sharing her experience from Henderson County in its work in property mapping and data management. She contributed directly to the conceptual design of the statewide parcels data set as a member of the NC Parcels project team way back in 2012, bringing her local government perspective on the value and practical management of data fields. And I think the practical word is important here because what we're trying to do is achieve something without significantly impacting the work locally that's critically important to those jurisdictions. Without any money to do it, she recruited counties in Western North Carolina for the pilot project and advocated for county participation statewide. Her leadership by example and commitment to sustaining NC Parcels was a key part of it achieving a full statewide data set after 2014. And I might add, it won a national award during roughly 2016. One of the people that knows her work well said we might have been starved for content without Pam. So Pam continues to be a champion of NC Parcels as an active and respected member of the NC Property Mappers Association, and it's with great pleasure that I recognize that contribution today. Want to say anything?
I just want to say thank you. It's a great honor. This is North Carolina GIS we're talking about here. So all you youngins, don't be afraid to get involved with the best GIS community in the nation. And to all you managers, don't be afraid to let them.
Okay, the next award winner is Art Rex from Appalachian State University, representing the academic side of our community. I'd like to ask him to come to the stage. So we were comparing hair today, and I told him I don't see many people that has whiter hair than I do. Art and I have known each other for a very long time, or else I wouldn't have said that. So let me tell you a little bit about Art. Art taught GIS and geospatial focused classes from 1981 to 2006, and continued to guide students up until the pandemic in 2020. He served as director of the GIS and Image Processing Lab for 25 years at ASU, and served in other roles later as a member of the broader community of Appalachian State University. He exposed over 500 students to GIS, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. Over 60% of the former students that he had work in North Carolina or have spent most of their career in North Carolina. He has former students also in 17 states and Canada. We know because we did the research. He also served the community outside of Boone and that area at the state level. He served on the GIS Conference Committee in the 1990s and in the 2000s, so he contributed that way. And he also worked within his community to better the use of GIS for the town of Boone, Watauga County, the city of Conover, Ashe County, town of Beech Mountain, and various others. The list is so long, I had to stop somewhere. So we wanted to recognize Art's contribution, and I know a number of his students, former students, are here today, And we would all like to say thank you for the work over that long tenure, Art.
It's quite nice. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the students that we've had in the past at Appalachian and that continue to work in the field. And just a couple thoughts that go along with that. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Just get comfortable with doing it. Okay? And try to learn something new, not every day, but once a week. Once a week. Stretch yourself into that comfort zone. Okay? Thank you, Tim, and thank you, everyone.
Okay, moving on. The next person I would like to recognize for this award is Sylvia Terziati from the U.S. Geological Survey. While she's making her way to the front, I'll tell you a little bit about Sylvia. Sylvia first serves in the water mission area of the USGS. When it comes to hydrography, she's a giant. She literally wrote the specifications on the USGS elevation-derived hydrography, which is no small feat. To have someone of her caliber reside in North Carolina has made our job easier at the state level, and I imagine across the other areas that she works in too. In 1994, she was a co-author for creating overlays and an indexing method using 11 different data sets to derive a rating for unsaturated zone and watershed characteristics for use by the state of North Carolina in assessing more than 11,000 public water supply wells and approximately 245 public surface water intakes for susceptibility to contamination. In 2007, she was cited as a co-author for a publication entitled LIDAR-Derived Flood Inundation Maps for the Real-Time Flood Mapping Applications in the Tar River Basin in North Carolina. In 2009, Sylvia piloted StreamStats in the French Broad River Basin. She's been a huge asset to North Carolina, even in the past beyond that, in getting the 1 to 24,000 scale in HD created. Her presence is always felt, and her knowledge and opinions are appreciated by everyone that she works with through our State Geographic Information Coordinating Council. And finally, she's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
I just want to say thank you, and I really feel lucky to have grown professionally here in North Carolina because this is such a welcoming and just wonderful community. So it's wonderful to have been here and still am, so I'm not going anywhere yet. Thank you so much.
Okay, last but not least, I'd like to call Gary Thompson from the North Carolina Geodetic Survey to the stage. Gary and I have known each other a very long time, maybe not quite as long as I've known Art, but darn close. The list of things I could say about Gary is much longer than the time I have available to me, so I'll just hit some of the highlights, and hopefully I don't miss anything super important. First of all, Gary has a long history of service to his core profession, professional land surveying, and in state government. He's a key voice in the GIS community as well. He's been a positive influence in the effort to bring the PLS and GIS professions together when the State Council looked at those matters a few years ago. He's a long-serving member of the Statewide Mapping Advisory Committee, sharing what's ahead for technical issues such as datums, the State Plane Coordinate System, and geodetic control matters. He has also contributed to the success of the GICC and the GIS community in general as the keeper of the Geodetic Control Network, which is one of the most extensive in the country. And when folks from other states want to know more about that network, they come to Gary. Way back in 1994, and this is a little bit of a history lesson for you. young whippersnappers. Is that what somebody said? I know this is what I'm about to share with you is very hard to believe, but it actually happened, okay? In 1994, when this new technology called GPS was emerging at the state and local government level in an operational sense, and there was concern about data collection using inexpensive, you can say cheap if you want, inexpensive but also potentially inaccurate devices. Gary and his office led the creation of the first GPS data collection and documentation standard and kept it up to date along the way as the technology changed. It is one of the first standards that the state GICC adopted way back in that time. Gary has been instrumental in significant state programs as well. The statewide orthoimagery program that he's key to and continues that today, that our agency leads that, but we need his support for horizontal accuracy control, making sure that we're doing that part of the project right. He helped create the floodplain mapping program over 20 years ago. That's also hard to believe it's been that long, but it has. He serves as vice chair of the council, representing the Department of Public Safety, and at the national level serves as chair of the National Geospatial Advisory Committee. So the list goes on. We're very fortunate to have Gary in North Carolina native, with his orientation to public service, and we'd like to thank him for that service.
Well, thanks for the award, and as Tim went through all the different things, it makes me think about just how proud I am to be part of the North Carolina team. We've done outstanding projects here in North Carolina, too long to list, and one of the most rewarding things is when I go to these national meetings, you hear other states talk about what they want to accomplish. And usually what they want to accomplish is what we've done here in North Carolina. So it makes us very proud to be part of that team. And thanks for the award. And I want to follow up with Rex. Continue to learn because technology is changing and we need to keep up to date. So thank you very much.
So I want to back up for a second and recognize Brandon Siffer and David Siffer as well. I left your names off the other day, or a little while ago. Sorry. Meant to recognize the whole family. So that's the that's the extent of the awards. Congratulations to everybody who received an award. And again, look ahead to your own work in North Carolina and aspire to be more than you think you're capable of, because the opportunity is here. We're a very progressive state where GIS is concerned. We haven't solved everything, as people connected to the council would tell you. So there are many challenges that we can still need to master. So with that, I'm going to shift to our keynote speaker, Joseph Kerski, who's going to talk to us for the next, until 1:30, about 5 forces, 5 skills, and 5 trends. And I think this will be inspiring for you as well.
Oh, greetings all. Joseph Kerski here. Let me ask you a few things to think about here that might be inspiring, might be challenging, but as we go forward, I'd like you to think about the following things. At what moment in your life did you decide to go into geospatial technology? At what moment did you say to yourself, these are my people? Maybe a teacher, a professor, a friend, a family member helped you see a future vision of yourself. Maybe a field trip, a book that you read, a special place in your neighborhood that only you knew about, sparked your love for the earth and made you want to have some role in protecting it. Now, for me, it was reading The Last Great Auk when I was a middle school student. Every year I would read that. Magnificent, flightless birds that would swim from Iceland to just offshore here in North Carolina. And I knew every year when I read that I was going to get to 1842 and that last family of great auks was going to be killed. I thought, can I do something about this? This is wrong in so many levels. Perhaps holding the family road atlas in your lap filled you with a thirst for adventure. Maybe as you learn more about the challenges, as Tim mentioned, facing our world, and your love for people and places made you decide, I will make a positive difference in the world. Now, folks, I'm asking you to think about this over the next 3 hours. Just kidding, we don't have 3 hours. Just wanted to make sure you were on your toes. Because I want you to do the following. I want you to think about your own story. I want you to practice articulating your own story to a world that now more than ever needs people like you. They need people that can specialize in land records, soil, water, energy, natural hazards, resilience, everything else that you folks are dealing with. But they also think holistically about our world. That's exactly what we need to solve our problems in our world, right? The lithosphere is connected to the atmosphere, is connected to the anthroposphere, right? The human sphere is connected to the hydrosphere, etc., the biosphere. It's all connected. And we need that holistic perspective. Now more than ever, I would argue. Now, in my case, I have been very blessed to be in 4 different sectors of society. Nonprofit organizations, so I was president of the National Council for Geographic Education. Government agencies, you can see that I've got this tenure in science and mapping agencies over the years. I basically worked for those agencies from the Cretaceous to the Holocene, a long period of time. I'm very honored to be like the university folks that were recognized, and you find students part of the academic community. So I teach right now at the University of Denver, the University of Minnesota, Pennsylvania. I teach at Harrisburg Community College as well. And I also serve on the ESRI education team. The ESRI education team really has 2 main goals, and I'll get to that in a moment, but I'm sharing this pathway for you to, not to bore you with, yours is a pathway, I can't stand my excitement. No, I'm sharing this with you for 2 main reasons. A, that you folks, especially those of you that are just kind of getting into your careers right now, or maybe mid-career types that are like, what more can I do? What different things can I do in my own organization? In 2 ways. First of all, you're not stuck in the same organization for your whole career, as mine shows. And secondly, geospatial technology and spatial thinking, this is the most important tool of all, right? Not whether we can buffer and overlay and so on. Those are great enabling tools to know how to do. But the spatially enabled thinking brain that you all have is the most important tool to cultivate going forward. So hopefully that gives you 2 things of encouragement, that A, you can change, and B, that geospatial thinking and spatial technologies can be valuable no matter what sector of society you happen to go into now or in the future, okay? So a little bit about my own pathway then, okay? As maybe a way of encouragement, I grew up in the Ute homelands, the homelands of the Ute tribe. They had 11 bands, the Paiutes, the Hopis, the Shoshone, but the Ute, Western Colorado. And this is my backyard where I grew up. It was a motel parking lot, so my folks owned a motel. How many of you have stayed in a motel when you know that there's someone living in an apartment behind the front desk? There's some Super 8s like that. Okay, that was basically us. So that sparked my love for knowing about, hey, where are you from? Where'd you travel to Western Colorado from, etc. So that was my early exposure to the wonders of people and the environment and the earth. Also, I made maps when I was a kid. What geeky, nerdy things did you like to do as a kid that nobody else liked to do? Embrace those things. Make them a part of your story. In my case, I had railroad yards, college campuses, bays, capes. I named all my streets as well. Now, you folks might appreciate this. What are the numbers on the margins of this map I made as a teenager? The 3500 north, the 4200 north is 7 blocks north of the 3500 north block. What are those numbers? This is the audience participation part, folks. Address ranges. What kid cares about address ranges? What kid knows about address ranges? Again, many of you, like me, love to do this as kids. You love to get out there in the environment. You like technology. Some of you that I've talked to this week at the conference, you found out about geospatial technology sort of midway through your undergraduate days, and you decided that's really for me. So I'm just asking you to think about your own story in these times, these moments that we have together. I also took photographs. There are very few people in my photographs. I had to get a certain angle in a certain office building. Hey, I'm just a kid. Can I take a picture out your office window? Because I wanted to get a certain angle of that landscape. I also had a mental map of the radio stations I could pick up at night on AM. Including X-Rock 80 from Juarez, Mexico. That was pretty cool, all the way from there to Grand Junction, Colorado. And continuing on, the first all-web GIS workshop I taught, 3 days long, guess where it was? Oklahoma University. Can I say that in North Carolina? They're good people too. But that was where it was, at U of O in Norman. 3 days long, I was super nervous. Guess what year? 2010. Can I do the whole thing with web-based tools? Oh my gosh, yes, it worked. Folks, it is a great honor for me to be here. I have great respect for the North Carolina GIS community. Tim, thank you so much for inviting me. The staff here is awesome. I have a hard enough time cooking for 2 people. Thank you all so much. The AV people, they've been wonderful. This is a beautiful facility too. I've got some roots here. I've taught 2 GIS workshops at the North Carolina School of Math and Science. A great place for teaching GIS for secondary ed. I've been to UNC Chapel Hill earlier this week and working with the geospatial librarians, the faculty, the staff. So I promised you, why am I going to all these places? Because the mission of the ESRI education team is twofold. And by the way, I've got some ESRI colleagues here too. Come see us at the exhibit hall. It's twofold. Broader implementation of GIS. In other words, GIS it's too valuable to be in 1 or 2 departments on campus, right? It's too valuable to be in 1 or 2 departments on campus. It can't just be in my own home discipline of geography or environmental studies or planning, right? It needs to be in sociology, civil engineering, data science, language arts, etc., criminal justice, etc., you name it, A to Z on campus and in greater society, right? It needs to be in multiple disciplines. Why? Because we've got these complex, serious issues on our planet that increasingly affect our everyday lives, right? And that's why we need this to be spread. The other mission of our team, and this is not just our team, it is in collaboration, in partnership with all y'all, okay? Ustedes, vous, tú, okay? In conjunction with all of you, the deeper implementation of GIS. So GIS is not, as you well know, but spread this to other colleagues, it's not just a single tool. It is a platform, right? It is a collection platform. It is an analysis platform. It's a way for you to communicate the results of the good work that you're doing with various web mapping applications, etc. So it is an entire platform. I work with many well-meaning colleagues, faculty in various places around the world who say, yeah, Joseph, I'm teaching GIS and or GI science, and I'm teaching ArcGIS Pro 3.1. And I'll say, that's great. That's a great tool. But what's your higher, more noble goal, right? You're trying to empower students to be change agents. You students, change agents on the landscape so they can think critically and spatially about our world and solving problems through this. If this was just a technology, Tim and others, including Bill Johnson, where's Bill? Bill wouldn't have gotten misty-eyed yesterday when he saw his maps in the public library if it was just a tool, right? He saw the vision years before that happened. Anyway, the point is, this is not just a technology. It is a platform, and it's a community of practice. And you all are the change agents making it happen. So I salute you all. This is some of my favorite people. And over the last year, I've been to the Wisconsin GIS Conference, the Oklahoma, the Florida, the European Association of Geographers. I've been to a lot of places, and you really do have something special here, something spatial, right, folks? I was working at the USGS back in the late Jurassic, and this NC1 map came around, like in 2003, 2004. Again, you folks are trailblazers. Nobody else had that. I mean, TNRIS in Texas existed, but it didn't have that single portal The point is, you're trailblazers, and I salute you all. So thank you so much for inviting me. I want to give you some encouragement in the next few moments, some connection, and some challenges, okay, as we go forward. Now, where is this? Here's a little geography quiz for you all. 3578. That's in North Carolina. Why is Joseph standing in the middle of the forest? Because that's where the latitude and longitude lines intersect. That's what geographers do, right? Let me ask you this. Who's a leader here? You all are leaders, right? You all are leaders. You are helping the world see the world in new ways, in different ways, in ways that help us to solve the 21st century challenges that we face. Think of the SDGs from the United Nations. Water, energy, equity, natural hazards, resilience. They're all spatial and they're all holistic in their approach. So you folks are tackling that. You know, there were some articles back in the 1990s that said, hey, geotechnologies is not going to exist by 2020 because it'll be so embedded in mainstream IT and workflows that it won't exist as a thing. And to some extent that's happened, right? As you all know, you've got colleagues in public works and parks and rec and zoning, et cetera, in your organizations that are now using at least some pieces of GIS. Whereas before it was sort of, oh, the GIS people, yeah, they're down the hall and to the right. Yeah, they're a little nerdy, but go see them. They're nice people. Right? And now it's more embedded. However, as this community well exemplifies, there's still something special about this community. We have a unique, empowering way of synthesizing and helping people to understand. So it's going to exist. It's going to continue. This community is going to continue. We feel quite challenged as well as feeling empowered, right? As COVID and natural hazards and other things that we're dealing with. However, I'm an optimist. I believe that with the tools that we have, data as services and other things, and this community, we will see a more resilient, healthier, more equitable future, right? That's what we all are seeking. And so I just want to encourage you, but I also want to challenge you though. You know, you folks are building the national spatial data infrastructure. You may be working on your parcels and your zoning and your traffic and all the other things that you're dealing with, but bit by bit, you're building this NSDI. I remember Nancy Tosta coming into the USGS office in 1994 saying, we're building the NSDI. We were all like, really? I thought we were just building DEMs and hydro and stuff. No, we're building something bigger and grander. And when I was working at the Census Bureau on Tiger, no, it didn't get invented by Google Maps in 2005. It was actually going way back to the 1980s, geocoding all of those address ranges. That was a big effort that you all helped pay for. That was all tax funded. And that was a huge effort. And I remember the Census Bureau director saying, this Tiger thing is going to live beyond what people remember about the 1990 census. And indeed, that was prescient. That was far reaching. Okay, so you folks are revolutionary in many ways. Now, we wanted to, as Tim asked me some months back, Joseph, we want you to talk a little bit about what's happening in the world of education. Now, why should you all care about education? You've got kids. You know kids. You were a kid. Or you've got concerns about our world. You want to see these problems solved and having the next generation encouraged to tackle those problems. Or you've got an alma mater that you care about, or an elementary school, or a high school down the street from where you live. Or if none of those appeal to you, you care about your future workplace. Is it going to be thriving? Who's going to be staffing those new positions in the future? So I think there's many reasons why us as a community should care about education, even if you're not on an education team like me, okay? What do we want the GIS professional landscape to look like, and how can you lead the way, and how can you connect with educators and what's happening in education? Now, I submit that these 5 forces are something for us to chew on in the next few moments, bringing us to this pivotal moment in geospatial technology. First of all, Geo Awareness. And by the way, these 5 forces, they're my own list. They're subjective, admittedly, and just like the 5 coolest places to visit in North Carolina before you die, or the 5 coolest bands of all time. Did you have arguments with your high school friends about what were the coolest bands? Okay, you never win that argument. But in this case, I'd love to have your feedback about, Joseph, you left off this one or that one. But I submit that these are at least some things that we can gather around. First of all, Geo Awareness. At no time in my career, perhaps you can relate, people outside these walls, they're talking about water and population change and energy and hazards and so on, right? They're talking about those things. Health, the list goes on. It was our community that led the way there, and we still have a leadership role, but the level of geo awareness is at an all-time high, which really is good for our community. The geo enablement, people are enabled to use these tools as never before, right? How many of you have a fitness app? You record your walks, your runs, your cycle rides. Okay, a bunch of people. You use Uber. The lights in this room, right? The electric company's using GIS. The food the wonderful food we had, the supply chain management that went into your phone, all the rest of it, right? It's geospatial technology underlying all those things. So people are enabled to use pieces of that as never before. And the geotechnologies having evolved into this cloud-based infrastructure, let me just have a moment. That is a huge leap forward. It's great that you have docs in the cloud, right? You're collaborating with a colleague and you've got your spreadsheets or your Word doc in the cloud. That's great. It's great that you have music in the cloud so you can listen to ABBA's greatest hits anywhere, anytime. That was a band, okay? But it's even better, I would argue, that geospatial technologies is in the cloud, because in the past it was, Tim, I've got this big data set and I can't share it with you. How am I going to do that? Now having that as a way to not just share data, but share the methods, which I want to encourage you. I don't think we're sharing the methods as well as we could be, the workflows. That's still a challenge. Okay, but the geotechnologies having evolved into this cloud-based infrastructure is an amazing leap forward. Why? Because we have these cross-disciplinary problems, right? It's not just water, it's not just energy, it's not just land use, it's not just soils. It crosses disciplinary and subject matter boundaries. Citizen science goes way back to the 19th century at least, right? With the Audubon movement and people gathering data on birds and so on. And now being able to do that, like with Survey 123, being able to say, hey, I'm going to collect data and I'm going to immediately map it and analyze it. And then what's next? Maybe take action about it, about the trash or the litter or the dangerous intersections or whatever else you're dealing with. I always say that because people send me their URLs. Hey, Joseph, I've got my data on the map. And I'll say, hey, that's great. And? The map is not the end goal, right? Understanding is the end goal. Taking action is the end goal. And I just wanted to encourage you, finally, storytelling. This whole thing is a story map, is it not? Okay, so I've got a Twitter feed here and only my mom and I look at it basically. But if you want to look at it, I've got a posting about an hour ago of this whole presentation. The reason why I mention that is because A, it's a story map, so you can look at it anytime, anywhere. And B, I've got some more things in here that I'm actually not going to be able to cover because I know that you're the North Carolina GIS community and you want to dig deeper. You want more. So I'm giving you more that I'm actually not going to cover, but that's on the Joseph Kerski feed, the Twitter feed. Okay, so I want to also have you think about this, the 5 key trends in GIS. Again, arguably, this is my own list based on my travels and working with communities like yours. It's great that we have 3D analytics. For a long time, we had 3D visualization. And some of you may remember in your courses at the university or community or technical or tribal college or a school even, we'll talk about K-12 education in a moment. But the last thing that you did in the semester was you flew through the data. Ooh! And you hope that your graphics card wouldn't crash, right? You flew through your population or your land cover or your elevation data. Now we've got actually 3D analytics, which is important, right? Because we've got a 3D world that we're living on. And at least the touching of BIM, CAD, and GIS is, I think, another key important thing going forward, right? Because in the past, it was sort of the GIS people mapping the exterior spaces, speaking Spanish, and the interior space mapping people speaking Portuguese, and we kind of understood a few words in common, but we really were separate worlds. And to build a resilience model for a city like this or a college campus takes the interior and the exterior spaces being mapped together to develop that model, right? So that's important. That's an important, and it wasn't just Jack Dangerman and the Autodesk CEO getting together and saying, we really need to work together. It's all of you pushing the boundaries of these tools. Real-time data and analytics, having the traffic cams and the stream gauges, right, and the real-time weather and all the other things that are going on. People want to map things now, right, or as near real-time as possible. The wildfire perimeters, et cetera. That is also enabled by WebGIS, as you well know. And then this whole enterprise notion that GIS spreads into different parts of the organization, I think, is an important one. And I also promised you I'd mention this earlier, and this is the time to mention it. You all have a leadership role here. because a lot of those folks in those other departments, they don't have the grounding in geospatial that you do. So you're the one to tell them about, to build a rigorous geodatabase, you need to do this. You need to think about a map projection, and here's why, and other things that you know that they don't know. So you have a key role here. And finally, artificial intelligence and machine learning, which we could spend the whole rest of the time talking about. But that's a reflection of GIS becoming an enterprise sort of a tool where it's connected now, not an isolated thing. It's connected to many other trends and so on that we could talk about. Now, I know you're a realist and you're saying, hey, Joseph, I want to get involved, for example, in my own workforce development in my own organization, or I want to connect with a school or a university or a technical college or a tribal college or a community college. How do I do that? I'm a full-time GIS professional. How about this? Giving demos. Computer speed versus the number of attendees watching your demo. Can you relate to this? Oh my gosh. Okay, how about this? You get these Microsoft Teams notices on Saturday night. I got to figure out how to turn these off. What about this one? Your file named really final 6 p.m. Friday night.aprx is unfortunately the name of the file you included in the package to all your stakeholders. Oops. We've all been there, right? So I understand. You folks are busy people. Now, I just want to get you to think about this. I think we're in phase 2 of GIS. Whereas, okay, take a serious issue like traffic accidents. It's affected my family, perhaps your family. It's a personal thing, but it's also a community issue. And so, okay, in the past, we could do this kind of thing, right? We could say, I'm going to map the traffic accidents in my city, my county, my region, and we could do this. We could look at different variables and so on and so forth. But now, that was phase 1 of GIS. We were kind of replicating what we did with paper maps in a digital way. Now, we can make these hex bins, right? And we can say, ooh, I want to extrude those. And let's say, just like you all are dealing with, I've got a limited staff, budget, time. Now I only have time to look at the consecutive hotspots, and that's all enabled, those decisions, based on these, what I call phase 2 of GIS, doing things that we could never do with paper maps or digital versions of paper maps. So I think it's an exciting time for us in the geospatial world. I really do. I also think that we're still a little bit tool-based. We're still building, we've got these Lego bricks that we need to assemble. And sure, we've got these solutions now, right, that many of you probably use. But I'd love to have a conversation with you all after the session here about what we can do to make GIS tools less like you've got to assemble this monumental starship out of these Lego bricks. It's great to have all the tools available, but what can we do to maybe upend some of these workflows? I think one manifestation of that is ArcGIS Insights, not to pin it all on the tools, but ArcGIS Insights is very intuitive. There's not really a traditional menu, if any of you have ever used that. It's, I'm going to drag this map over to here. Why is that important here? Well, again, thinking about your colleagues that don't have the GIS background that you have, but they want to do some analytics. They want to do some analysis. Okay, that's I think, partly a glimmer of the way forward. Also, I really believe that despite what I said about the rise of Geo Awareness, that you still need your elevator speech. You still need it because the person down the hall, your CEO, your county supervisor, your board of directors, whoever you're working for, is going to call you, say, hey, I've got Google Maps on my phone. Why do I need you? There's still some of that around. So you need to have that story and you're articulated. Now I've got on my Our Earth video channel, which has 6,000 videos on it, okay? I'm really passionate about this. But one set of videos I have is me in actual elevators giving my own elevator speech. You can look at those if you want for some inspiration, but make it your own story. Make it your own voice. Your own story about your 1 minute, why my position matters and what I'm doing to contribute to the organization. Your 5 minute, your 1 hour workshop that you conduct for colleagues. Have that ready to go because you never know when they're going to call you to do that. A couple of other things that I would like us to think about here. One, don't stop at the map. I already talked about that earlier. What does the map show? What does it help us to understand in a deeper, richer way? And secondly, don't get too attached to the tools. What is this? I was conducting a geotech workshop after school in a high school, and this was used as a doorstop. But at one point, it was someone's valued computer infrastructure, at least a piece of it. It's an old Mac with a tiny screen and a disk drive underneath. The point is the tools change, as some of the folks said earlier. What you're fostering and what we're trying to foster in our educational work with schools and universities and so on is three legs of this stool of geoliteracy that I call. First of all, the content knowledge. It's good to know about hazards or energy or population change, etc. That's important. So a message for you students in particular. Skills is not just the geotechy skills, it's the communication skills and beyond. And finally, the geographic perspective that I think is so important to our world. Now, I've got some things on the job landscape that you can look at in this story map. What's my own research? Some of you might wonder, what is Joseph passionate about? My own is about GIS in education. No surprise, right? How do people learn with GIS? How do instructors teach with GIS? How should they teach with GIS? Not just in GIS programs, but actually in other disciplines like sociology, engineering, business, etc. How should they use, first of all, why should they use geospatial technology? Just taking the business example, it's all about location, 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 right? So if you're teaching supply chain management or risk assessment or target marketing, why wouldn't you use GIS? Well, because they think, oh, well, that's for the geo-enviro types. That's not for me. And then you and I can go in there and say, well, here are some tools, here's some data sets, here's some curricular items that you can actually plug into your course without being a geospatial technology guru. Now, at some point, sure, I want to have our community, again, showing leadership saying, if you're doing some routing of ships across the Arctic in your business course, I want you to know about map projections, and here's why. I don't want you to use the Mercator projection when you're studying the Arctic. So that's what makes me tick, is teaching and learning with GIS. So now thinking about what should universities, colleges, schools teach, I think that we need to seize this moment to teach in some new ways. First of all, I encourage instructors to get away from those long labs. And I'm not telling them to do anything that I'm not doing myself. I encourage my own self to do this. I had a lab that was 40 pages long at one point of going to census.gov and grabbing all the geometry and getting the demographic data and then joining it together. Now, I'm not saying that joining is not an important skill, but I'm encouraging instructors, just in this one example, to say, okay, if you need to teach about joining at some point, join this data set to the living atlas of the world. Okay, and there's block groups and census tracts, et cetera, in there. You can teach that concept in a much shorter time. Then you've got a block freed up for other things that you want to teach. Another thing is that students don't read that stuff anymore, right? You students, you don't need to read that 40-page lab. At one point, that was all they had, is those labs, those activities that instructors created. Why don't they need to read that anymore? Because you get stuck on your geocoding part and you go to a video. You review it and make sure it meets your needs. Or you go to the software documentation. It's really like an ebook nowadays, right? It's got graphics and other things in there. And so the message for instructors, I think, is very encouraging. It's you don't have to create everything yourself, and you don't have to have these long screenshotted labs like you did in the old days. So that's one of the things that I share with instructors. Another thing that I think is quite interesting is that I work with tribal colleges, as I mentioned. I work with HBCUs, MSIs, minority serving institutions. And in the tribal college case, those students are very keen on this whole idea of holistic thinking. So I created with a colleague this story map showing the Lakota words for certain landforms.
River, Wakpa,
I'm sharing this with you for two reasons.
boundary, Oikago,
Story maps are a natural fit into many different environments and many different educational institutions, formal and informal. B, this story map, as you can see, it's a fairly simple idea. A couple of audio clips. And the nice thing about story maps technically is that it knows, hey, that's an audio file. I can configure a player because it's an audio file. Did I have to code that? No, it knows that's an audio file. I'm going to configure a player. So the story maps and other web mapping applications are really quite smart these days. And that's all good. But the most important thing here was to draw attention to indigenous endangered languages, right? You've got an average age of 61, 62 people speaking Lakota, for example, and many other indigenous languages around the world. So we wanted to, in this little example, draw attention to that and have students say, hey, and faculty say, hey, we could have whole tribal elders speaking in the indigenous language and put that in a story map about why is this site important and sacred and so on. There's so many opportunities and possibilities here. So that's just one example of what we do with instructors at all levels. Okay, I've already talked about this. One of the things that I wanted to show here is just a couple of examples of awesome student work. One is a high school student making a map of the high school student's campus. And the high school had a event, and the student flew a drone and made a map, basically a zoning map of the campus and how it would look like on the Saturday 2 months hence when there would be an event on campus. It was a very effective planning tool. I really like this middle school student's story map on the right whales. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but one of the things I liked about this one was that at the end, she actually has a solution, not just here's the problem and here's the distribution of these right whales dying in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence, but the whales were getting stuck in these lobster traps, so came up with a solution to help the situation. So again, taking action. And there are plenty of educators around the world and right here in North Carolina that are making a positive difference. So just to kind of let you know what's happening in the world of geospatial education, I'd say it's slow but steady progress. Education is a big societal construct, right? It's little rudder changes of the ship that are turning it. There's increased attention, though, to project-based learning, workforce development at all levels of education. There's slow but steady progress. Mostly it's still being used as an instructional tool to teach science, social studies, language arts. Only in about 10% of high schools are they actually teaching geospatial technology. And this is just the US. I could give you examples around the world as well. But we've got a kind of a geeky story map, but I think it's kind of fun. All these little red schoolhouses, this is just the US schools. They get all the ArcGIS technology that they could use if they wanted to, but most of them use ArcGIS Online, as you probably would imagine, because it meets their needs. It's got a lot of content. So there's a lot of examples right here in your own state of wonderful educators. Well, you met Deborah Troxel yesterday, I hope. She's one of the stars in this, and she's right here in your state. So lots of room for encouragement there. Also in higher education, I wanted to give you a little sense of what's going on. Most GIS is still in geography, GIS, and environmental programs. But I'm here to tell you that there's an increasing diffusion in business and health in particular. Makes sense to us, right? But it's still a bit of a knocking on all the doors and windows. Again, I can't do this alone with my little team of 15 people. It's in conjunction with you, reaching out to your alma mater, etc. And also, there's an encouraging word on digital humanities. I was working, for example, with New Mexico State. They had a grant. Hey, Joseph, we want you to come and teach about story maps because we have all these fine arts people that want to do place-based narratives of their poems, their paintings, etc. What do I know about fine arts? That was great. I got to meet a whole new community and work with their researchers, and it's actually quite a spatial what they're trying to do. So that's just an example, and you can see these other disciplines where it is small, admittedly, but growing. And a couple of recommendations, again, to make a shout out to North Carolina. You actually do have people like Jeff Essick and others that are geospatial librarians. It's their job and their passion to spread GIS throughout the campus. So where that happens, it is a good thing for geospatial technology. Because really, folks, I mean, I'm a geographer, right? Many of you are geo-enviro types, planning types. We're not going to grow this at the rate that we want to grow this if we don't contact and work closely with other disciplines. Amen? So let me ask you this. How many of you feel 100% adequate in your job? That's kind of a personal question. I have many moments of feeling inadequate. Gosh, I have to speak to the North Carolina GIS community. They're some of my most respected, wonderful people in the whole world. What can I say that, to encourage them? So I was reading a book about a year ago. It was the M through Z lyrics book. The author said, I don't feel fully adequate of being a songwriter. It was Paul McCartney's M through Z lyrics book. If Paul McCartney doesn't feel adequate 100% of the time on his job, it's okay for us to feel inadequate. That's okay, okay? It's like my colleagues have been saying all day. You embrace the lifelong learning, right? We're all learning from each other, and that's exactly why we need each other. So it's okay to feel inadequate. And I love this quote from Bernstein. To accomplish great things, 2 things are required, a plan and not enough time. Does that sound familiar? That's pretty much what we deal with all the time. And I'd like to close with this, folks. Still mapping after all these years. You folks with me? Do I need to sing some more? Okay, I'm going to close with these 5 skills. Again, it's my own list. We could have a conversation about, Joseph, you left off this one or that one. For geotechnology professionals and instructors and you students out there. First of all, be curious. This leads to you being tenacious about that really, really final .aprx and so much more. You're tenacious about the software. You're tenacious about your own learning. You're tenacious about, hey, I've got a bazillion things to do at work, but here you are, networking with each other and learning from each other. Asking good questions. That's what we need at ESRI and in all of your organizations, right? You need employees that can ask questions that their supervisor's not even asking. So you students that are still in school, ask questions that your professor's not even asking you. Ooh. And that is, as I believe Bill talked about this yesterday, part of this geographic inquiry process where you're asking a question, you're gathering data, you're analyzing it, and then, as I indicated earlier, you're taking action on it, or you're encouraging others to take action on it, and that leads to additional questions. And then secondly, being able to work with data and be critical of it. Now, I know this sounds super boring. Joseph, I can't stand the excitement here, but this data blog, oh boy, tell me more. A colleague and I wrote the GIS Guide to Public Domain Data some years back, and we wanted to keep the conversation going about the following 3 things. So we have this ongoing, you all have a device, if you could look up spatial reserves on your device, that's where this resides. Every week we talk about 3 things. Where do I find data? Spatial data. How do I know if it's any good? Can I trust it? Bill talked about this yesterday, actually. We are truth tellers, right, Bill? How do I know if I can trust the data? Data quality issues. ArcGIS Online is an open platform, right? There's no ESRI bouncer at the door, right, saying, you can't put that data up there. No. It's a completely open platform. Now, the Living Atlas of the World is a subset of that from authoritative mapping agencies, NOAA, North Carolina DNR, and other agencies. Is that data perfect? No, that's not perfect either, but it's metadata rich. I never metadata I didn't like. You've heard that before. Oh, bad geo pun. It's still a complex planet, right? We've got an oblate spheroid, and we're trying to model that. We're trying to understand that. And plus, we've got 8 billion now humans modifying the surface of the world. And so GIS is inherently complex because of, I think, those things and many other things we could talk about. It's a dynamic planet. It's a dynamic Earth. However, it is much more approachable with GIS as a way of understanding the world. So even the Living Atlas of the World, which is a wonderful set of data, is not perfect. Look at the metadata and find out if some of those things are suitable for your needs. In the world of education, I encourage educators to start with those Living Atlas apps. The Water Balance app, the Wayback Imagery, the Drought Aware, no login required. And a very powerful terabyte loads of, it's like, my precious, you've got a lot of data at your fingertips. So where to find data? How do I know if it's any good? And thirdly, societal issues like ethics and copyright. There's a lot of power at your fingertips with geospatial. How are you symbolizing the data? How are you classifying it? How are you representing it? How are you gathering it? Are you documenting it? And so on. Are you unintentionally misleading the people that could potentially look at the results of your data? So those are the 3 things that we talk about in the Spatial Reserves blog. One of the things that I observe often, looking over shoulders of people or else in Zoom or Teams meetings, where you've got it within a half a minute, right? You could have an ArcGIS Online map with 10 layers. Hey, do you know where all those layers came from? No? Well, maybe you better find out, right? It's so easy we're all data publishers, right? It's not just the USGSs and the Ordnance Surveys of the World and the UNEP, et cetera. It's all of us, right? We're all data creators, so we have additional responsibilities that maybe we didn't have just a few years ago. So that's what I think is the second important skill, being able to work with a wide variety of data and be critical of it. Maps are representations of reality, right, folks? They're very useful representations, but the representation's just the same. They have an air of authenticity. They look like they're facts. They look like they're authoritative, when sometimes they're not. So the point is, be critical of all data, especially map data. And in association with that, understand the ethical implications and so on. Know your geographic and geotechnical foundations. Again, this is where this community, you need to have a deep knowledge of, when I was talking about the deeper and the broader notions of GIS, a deep knowledge of GIS. You're the leaders in this field, in GI science. And there's a broader and broader community each day, each month, that is starting to dip toes into the geospatial waters. And this is where you can say, okay, these are the important things to think about. So I really rely on you folks to be the leaders here. Also, you are all geo mentors. I've been very impressed, not just this week, but in working with you, you've probably seen my posts on the North Carolina listserv over the years, that you are very generous with your time and your expertise. Much appreciated. But I don't think we do the following as much as maybe we could. And that is, who can I connect with to receive mentorship? We're a bit hesitant to talk to one of our colleagues saying, hey, could I have you as a mentor for a while? A bit more than just asking you a technical or an organizational question every once in a while. I just encourage all of us, myself included, to do that more. We're very good about the first one, but I don't think I think we're a bit hesitant on the second one. Also, identifying your gaps. How can you fill those gaps? Look at the geospatial technology competency model at some point. This is a consortium of community colleges that I and others advised to create this thing, this pyramid, and it's about workforce needs and then where should we be teaching them in our schools and colleges and universities. But I think it's helpful for geospatial professionals to look at these and find out, do I have any gaps? And then how would I fill those gaps? I especially like the personal effectiveness competencies at the very bottom, which is probably pretty tiny for you in the back, but it's, are you ethical? Can you deal with data? Are you organized? Things like that. So I encourage you to take a look at that geospatial technology competency model. Be flexible and adaptable. Some of the most treasured moments in my career have been when I taught in Kenya, the UAE, Australia. Good on you, mates. She'll be right, etc. Okay, those are treasured moments. Go international. Now, they're expensive, right, those trips. I wouldn't have gone if someone hadn't paid me, really. So I recognize the limitations, but try to pursue some international opportunities. If you can't, go outside your comfort zone. So even at a conference like this, I encourage you, go to some track that's completely outside of your own wheelhouse. You'll meet some new people. You'll find out. I attended some this morning that I learned some new things. So, and yesterday as well. Fascinating. So I encourage you to do that. Go outside of your comfort zone and do a lot of reading, not just geotechnical stuff, but read other things. What's your favorite map-based book? Mine is, think about that, The Map That Changed the World. It's all about the world's first geologic map. I also love Longitude. Probably some of you have read Longitude. I also love The Mapmaker's Wife, about the French surveying team that went down to Ecuador in 1730 and measured one line of the width of 1 degree of latitude and wanted to see if the Earth was a prolate spheroid or a oblate spheroid. Ooh, fascinating stuff. I also like this one. Think about this. Am I at the center of this? I love this Japanese diagram. Ikigai. What you love to do, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what can you be paid for and provide for your family. Try to get to the center of that. I think many of us stayed in geospatial technology because we're at least in that sort of center zone a lot of the time. Maybe not every single moment of every single workday, right? You very seldom meet someone this isn't like the Hotel California, right? Where you can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. Remember that? Or am I dating myself? That was the Eagles. That was a band, okay? The point is, you can leave the geospatial community, but very seldom do people do that. I mean, people leave Esri, they start a solar company or something like that. But the point is, this is a very wonderful community, right? So very seldom do people leave the community, or if they do, they very seldom say, you know, those GIS people, yeah, those weren't happy years of my life when I was with them. No, quite the contrary, right, folks? So keep this, maybe pin this near your desk and see how you're aligned with that. Good communications, finally. You're like, finally, Joseph, get to the end. My gosh, this is torture. No, hopefully you'll say, there were some nuggets there that I can take away. Maybe they're bite-sized, gluten-free geospatial nuggets, but they're nuggets just the same. Have good communication. Remember, there's a rise of geo awareness, but not everybody understands what you do. In part, that's why we work with K through 12. We want to raise the level of geospatial awareness and spatial thinking so that people, when they get to the universities or when they become our supervisors, they'll understand the connections and all the spatial things that we love to deal with. Folks, this decade will be an exciting one for geospatial technologies. I truly believe that. And I also believe that you have a key role in making that happen. You and me making maps. Sometimes it feels like you and me making maps. Do I need to sing more? No, seriously, the end goal here is that wise decisions will be made with the spatial perspective and the use of geotechnologies for a healthier, happier, more sustainable future. Last quiz, 36 degrees north, 80 west. That's in High Point. That's really close to here. But you have to kind of trudge out into a field. But that's what I do. Hey, and that's what you do. You're making the world a better place. Questions, comments, concerns? Do we have a moment for questions, Tim? Tim says yes. Because rasters and vectors are the maps we two can share. I've got more of those, and I'm going to torture you until you come up with a question. Just kidding, folks. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to chat with you at the SRE exhibit with my colleagues. And again, all best wishes for a continued successful future. Thanks, folks. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. Great job. I'm not even going to think about singing. So we've got about 6 minutes before the next session. Just a few things to share before we close out. And in light of the fact that this large group might not be together again until 2025, we have 560 attendees. So congratulate yourselves on being here. So that's great. Just a couple of reminders. We obviously have sessions this afternoon, special interest groups at 5 o'clock-ish. Continue to enjoy Winston-Salem. There's a lot to do in this vicinity if you haven't walked down the streets up until now. Reminder about the North Carolina Neighbors session tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee will be with us either in person or virtually. A lot to share there and possibilities for doing things together going forward. And then we close out with a town hall. I think there's some questions out there that are being posed that you need to look at. I would really appreciate if you would stick around for that. I think it's important for the community to share. You've learned a lot over the past day or so. Now it's time to feed something back to us so we can do the right things for North Carolina through the council and at the state level. There's a conference evaluation that'll come your way after the conference is over. There will be a 2025 conference. Help us do it right. With that, have the rest of the day.